our usual Thursday feature, What's the Cost? Then we have my opening commentary. Thereafter, we open the phone lines, 9:35 just about, to facilitate your calls, as I said earlier, on 212-9824 or 462-0919. And then at 10:10, upon our return from the NPR news at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock, we will be having more reactions to the contribution to the budget debate by opposition leader Mark Golding. And we are intent on having financial analyst and, of course, public affairs commentator Dennis Chung in that segment with us. We are also going to be speaking with Dr. Nadine Spence in relation to reactions to the budget. And then at 11:10, for just about 10 minutes, we're going to be making contact with a contributor to speak with us about matters pertaining to Down syndrome. So that's a contributor from the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation in commemoration, of course, of World Down Syndrome Day, which is going to be happening tomorrow, Friday, 21st March. Yes? So that is World Down Syndrome Day tomorrow, and we'll have a contributor from the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation at 11:10 here on the program. And of course, at 10:30, the phone lines will be open to you again, and at 11:30 through to the end of the program, we will also be facilitating more of your calls. So what's the cost? Budget debate being set for this afternoon in the Parliament, where the Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, will take to his feet and present his contribution to the budget debate. We are well and truly in budget season. And it is not surprising, therefore, that we're continuing to take reactions throughout the program this morning, and we invite your calls as well on the matter. Now, following the opposition leader's contribution to the budget debate, which has to be taken in tandem with that of his spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, Jamaica is now at a point where a reasonable inference, a reasonable assessment can be made as to what is in the offing. One of the things that I find quite curious and quite discomforting and disappointing is that for a set of folks who, in keeping with the cut and thrust of our political system and the competitiveness of our democratic system of governance, that set of people, they're seeking to form government, they're seeking to replace the incumbents, so they are essentially an alternative. And while being in opposition for some 9 years now, and in this particular term, being in opposition for just about 4.5 years, I find it quite discomforting, distressing even, that so much of what the parliamentary opposition is proposing and expressing that they would do were they to be entrusted with the reins of government in this country are things that are already happening. It is quite discomforting, it is quite distressing for me, and I suspect that is the case for many other observers and onlookers. In his contribution to the budget debate last Thursday, Julian Robinson, as we pointed out some time ago, espoused the 4 E's. He anchored his quote-unquote growth strategy, or should I say, the PNP's proposed growth strategy centers on 4 E's. He indicated that they are education, energy, efficiency, and emerging economies. Mark Golding, for his part, added a 5th E this past Tuesday when he made his contribution to the budget debate. Mark Golding's 5th E, by the way, is ethics. Now, incidentally, listeners, and quite curiously, over a decade ago, speaking at an event at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel, because I was in attendance, then as a senior aide to opposition leader Andrew Holness. Speaking at that event back in August of 2012, Andrew Holness presented 5 E's that he enumerated, that he identified as being critical to Jamaica's development for the next 50 or so years. And those 5 E's, listeners, are, first of all, 4 of them coincide with Julian Robinson's. They are education, the economy, energy, efficiency, and the 5th E for Andrew Holness was environment. That is the only E that does not coincide with what Julian Robinson in 2025 espoused. I'm going to allow you listeners to hear a bit of audio where Andrew Holness was speaking in August of 2012, while Julian Robinson was speaking on Thursday, 13th March 2025, well over a decade after Andrew Holness.
Hi, I'm Julian. I'm here to talk to you about the PNP's plans to grow the economy and create a better Jamaica for all of you. And my plan is called the 4E plan.
I think that there are 5 areas that Jamaica must focus on. I call it the 5 E's. We must focus on education.
1. Education.
We must focus on our energy problems.
Our second pillar is energy.
We must also focus on efficiency.
Our third pillar is efficiency. We're going to make government more efficient.
We must focus on our economy.
And our fourth pillar is emerging economies.
All right. So there you have it. The very growth agenda, the growth strategy essentially, that forms a critical plank of the platform of the PNP and the case it is making as parliamentary opposition to secure the vote of members of the electorate to form government, thereby replacing the incumbent Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government. It reverberates around 4 E's when over a decade ago it was Andrew Holness who presented 5 E's: education, economy, energy, environment, and efficiency. The only E Julian has not appropriated, yes, is the E, environment. I will leave you listeners to make of that what you will. Now, as I started out pointing drawing your attention to yesterday, listeners, having regard to the considerable quantum of revenue or potential inflows to government coffers that the PNP is proposing to give up. They are indicating that they're not going to be taking $11 billion each year from the NHT. The PNP is indicating that they will be increasing the employer's tax credit from 30% to 40%. That means they're giving up more revenue. They have indicated that they will essentially do a host of other things that will be seeding revenue. Yes? And while they're at it in terms of seeding revenue, including, for example, in that case, no corporate income tax on MSMEs for the first 3 years of their operations. So while they're seeding revenue in all of those areas, the PNP is indicating and espousing that they're going to be doing a myriad of things. So they're spending, so they are proposing to take in considerably less money, while at the same time spending considerably more. How do you reconcile the two? We note that we haven't heard any definitive declaration from opposition leader Mark Golding on the question of new taxes. does Jamaica have a definitive and unequivocal commitment from the parliamentary opposition, from the PNP, that a PNP government led by Mark Golding or whomever else will not be going the route of imposing new taxes? Is there a definitive declaration in that regard? And you hear this talk about discretionary spending because that is the new pivot. So when asked or when interrogated about the credibility of the plan that they have espoused and how they will finance it, how they will make it happen, the pivot that the PNP has elected to use in this instance, yes, is that there's just about $360 billion in the budget that constitutes discretionary spending. Whether you call it discretionary spending or whatever else, all of the things contained in this year's budget are attached to an area of service delivery in the country. So separate and apart from salaries and of course debt servicing, there are government programs. All of the things situated in this budget are linked to an area of expenditure. Because government operates based on the provision of programs. All of the interventions, things like PATH, things like pharmaceuticals, you name it. The question to Mark Golding this morning: can you indicate the things that are currently being funded, the programs that are currently in place, that your PNP, were it to form government in this country, would stand down or do away with? Tell us what you'll be doing away with. You need to come and make that point. It is not good enough to just tell us that there is some amount of discretionary spending available. Not so. There is discretionary funds, yes, but the truth of the matter is that at present, those discretionary funds are linked to service delivery determined by this government. You need to now tell us what aspects of what is currently being done and supported by this budget presented by this incumbent government would you elect to change, jettison, stand down, tweak, or whatever. What aspects of it? The support being provided to farmers, for example, production incentives made available through RADA, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. Is it that you're going to be reducing those? What exactly are the things you're going to be doing away with in order to make your pipe dreams come true? An important point to observe, listeners, is that Julian Robinson, who spent just over 2 hours on his feet, and Mark Golding, who spent just about 3 hours on his feet, so in excess of 5 hours of talking time in the budget debate by the parliamentary opposition, and so much of what they indicate that a future PNP government will do are things that are actually already being done by the incumbent Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government. At a minimum, what that suggests to you, elsewhere in media, a particular journalist, a particular commentator used the expression that the government has essentially boxed out the PNP. And that is what is coming to light indeed. Because so comprehensive, so fit for purpose is the government's program of work that it is giving the opposition trouble. It's giving the opposition a headache to find room to maneuver and things that they can come with, things that would in any way even be original. You have heard Julian Robinson's 4 E's are appropriated from, taken from, yes, Andrew Holness's 5 E's from August of 2012. And Julian Robinson was speaking on the 13th of March 2025, 13 years later. Yeah? So the idea is this. It is evident when a government, an incumbent government, is doing well, when its opponents, the parliamentary opposition, are struggling to maneuver in relation to providing a platform of cogent, coherent, credible, and compelling alternatives. So much of what the PNP indicates that they will come and do are things that are already being done. And as I used the analogy yesterday, consider for a moment a man who pounces on a woman who happens to already be dating a man. So he is this other man who is seeking to win her favor. So she's already dating, he comes along, pull up her foot, and he's telling her this and that, seeking to win her over and woo her favor. And everything he is articulating, everything he is telling her as to why she should come over on his side are things that are already being done by the person she is currently dating. How can that make sense? What is the basis on which you would therefore seek to or expect to displace the incumbent? Let us enumerate and examine a few. When you would have heard from Mark Golding on Tuesday, he made mention of issues pertaining to road maintenance. Via the Spark program in particular, and you had allied programs such as REACH, and the move that is on in earnest now to get Jamaica to a single road authority. The Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, mentioned this when he spoke in the middle of last year at one of those Jamaica House post-cabinet media briefings. So the business of road maintenance via ultimately a single road authority is what Mark Golding has espoused, and that is already happening. They speak about agriculture, and you would have seen on social media a clapback from Agriculture Minister Floyd Green to Julian Robinson, who spoke about such things as research and innovation in agriculture, and he spoke to irrigation. All of that a key parody, as Floyd Green in his clapback video was able to espouse. On the crime management front, murders are down 30% year over year. The PNP, quite frankly, cannot come with any points on the crime management debate or crime management front just now. Even in relation to SSL, what the PNP has said is that they will leave no stone unturned in pursuing the SSL matter, which is already what is happening now with an independent international investigating forensic outfit coming in to do work on that matter. And of course, they speak about efficiency. That also is happening. But when we return from the break, I will come down in further detail on the things that are being proposed by the parliamentary opposition that are already in train. Stay with us. Back with you here on the sound of News Talk 93 FM. I'm Marlon Morgan, and we are going to be taking your calls up to 10 o'clock. Callers, remember the numbers: 876-212-9824 or 876-462-0919. So just before we had ran to the break, we were going down the list of things that Mark Golding and Julian Robinson would have indicated that a future PNP government would essentially undertake. And And I am putting it to the public based on what they are able to verify, what they are able to scrutinize for themselves, things that are in fact already in train, well underway. So I just spoke about SSL because Mark Golding was in Andrew Holness's West Central St. Andrew constituency a few Sunday nights ago, where they were presenting Mr. Paul Buchanan as their standard bearer for the PNP. And notwithstanding all the talk and bombast you hear from the PNP on the question of SSL, all Mr. Golding was able to indicate, and he quite carefully and cleverly curated his words when he said that when if the PNP were to form government, they would leave no stone unturned where it concerns the matter of SSL. And I am putting it to listeners that that is precisely what is going on. When the scandal at SSL came to the fore, you had an interim manager put in place. You had exhibits that were being secured in earnest. Ultimately, you had the services of an independent international forensic auditing outfit, Kroll in this case, coming into Jamaica at the request of the then Finance Minister, Nigel Clark, to undertake certain investigations with a view to ensure that no stone is left unturned indeed, and with a view to ensure that there is absolute transparency and professionalism in the investigation. And that is precisely what has happened. So the whole idea of what Mark Golding said, to leave no stone unturned on the SSL matter, that is precisely why I keep, as we speak, FID has done some body of work in relation to this matter. FID, of course, being the Financial Investigation Division. And, of course, yes, FID is collaborating with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And I gather that the latest on this matter is that the DPP had actually requested of FID certain further and better particulars in relation to an aspect of this entire situation. So ultimately, a brief will be with the DPP for appropriate prosecutorial action, and this matter will play out in the courts. Now, the question of government bureaucracy. We all know that there is this unwieldy, cumbersome bureaucracy that has constrained the growth horizon and growth prospects of the Jamaican state. So efficiency, one of Andrew Holness's E's from August 2012, also happens to be one of Julian Robinson and the PNP's E's, the question of efficiency. So they would have presented some plans or some perspectives on the question of efficiency. But if you consider for a moment, there are actually tangible, sustainable, and well thought out plans and initiatives on the question of efficiency at present. Last year, when the Prime Minister presented a major policy statement, indeed the government's next chapter, which was denoted by a pivot to growth. The R in Aspire, the acronym Aspire, yes, the R in that acronym stands for reduce the bureaucracy. That's what the R denotes, reduced bureaucracy. Further to that, so November of 2024, you had this major policy statement. Subsequent to that, in January of 2025, the Prime Minister established the Speed Task Force. Speed, of course, being streamlining processes for efficiency and economic development. That is the Speed Task Force. But in tandem with all of that, we know that there is a particular legislative instrument on which much of our bureaucracy as a country turns, and that is the Public Procurement Act. And what has happened in relation to the Public Procurement Act? The government took that act, which was passed into law by the PNP in its most recent iteration as government. We had what is called the Public Procurement Act of 2015, and there were several deficiencies with that act. Several provisions in that act served to retard our growth prospects as a country. The existing procurement regime, for example, serves to safeguard the bureaucratic red tape rather than facilitate the red carpet for businesses in the country, particularly businesses that are operating in the micro, small, and medium-sized sector, MSMEs. And so, just last week, Friday, I myself contributed to the debate in the Senate on the Public Procurement Amendment Act of 2025. So the very things that will change the game as it relates to bureaucracy in the country and ushering greater levels of efficiency are happening and being done by the incumbent government. I gather we have a call on the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Straight Up.
Morning, Morgan.
Hi, this is Al.
It is.
Morning, sir.
Yes. While listening to you in your parambles, it sounds to me that, criticism is one of those things that works along with democracy. And some people don't like to be criticized because they don't like democracy, because they are carrying a particular line for our country to go into a particular philosophical direction. So they don't like criticism.
What philosophical direction? The direction that Cuba is in?
Let me just finish my time. We understand, the country understand that when I travel around the country, they realize that some people want to carry us where North Korea is.
Okay,
so,
very well.
Now, opposition came and speak. All of the organization give credit. And I say yes, but there are certain things in life when certain people give you credit, you must not accept it because they are poison mouth. Fine, let me just tell you why. I don't know if you heard what is happening down at Metro, that little bus company in Montego Bay. How much million have been siphoned off? I don't know if you know that and how you don't know that. So in order to comment on it, because mainstream media are not carrying those things.
May I ask you this, Al?
Yes.
Are you aware that the change that is in place now in terms of the fuel base of the JUTC, including the Montego Bay Metro? Hold on, Al. I'm going to ask you to just understand this. I'm going to ask you to, Al, both of us cannot speak at the same time. I'm going to just establish a simple ground rule, my friend. I am intellectually agile enough to have a discussion, a debate with any PNP supporter or member of the PNP. I demonstrate that time and again. So that is nothing for me. I simply do not want to have a situation where myself and someone else are speaking at the same time. I want you to say what you're saying, I say what I'm saying, and we are both engaged in a dialogue. I do not want us to be talking over each other or talking at the same time. I say that time and again. Anyway, conclude the point you're making, because I will also come in and say what I was saying earlier.
And he's involved in thieving the money. That's what we're talking about, not in the picture.
No, repeat what you said, Olaga. I didn't get that point.
I'm talking about Metro, the company that operates JUTC in Montego Bay.
What about them?
Have you heard how much money have been misappropriated down there?
No, sir. I have not heard that. I have not heard that.
All right, fine. Well, let me give you an example if you don't hear.
How much money misappropriated down there?
It's a full argument.
No, man. Don't move over that yet. How much money is alleged to be misappropriated at Montego Bay Metro?
Call down there and you will hear.
I see.
Call. While you're on the line, you ask a very worthy producer to call Metro and let them tell you. It's upon every social media.
All right, let me ask you this now. Let me ask you this now, Al. Have you heard how much is in question at the KCMC and at the Spanish Town Municipal Corporation?
Lord, I'm glad you said so. I was at the KCMC yesterday, and somebody said to tell you, say, you don't hear nothing yet. We are listen, they say to tell you, say, so you must come out that one. The paper, the piece of paper, the KCMC, when they give me, the first piece of paper they give me. Oh, see it here. Hear it. What is written on this? When they let go this one here, you will find out how who from 2017 to 2023 extend how much. You see what theater? It's like a joke to come to see what theater that is joke to some other money that has been spent and cannot be
On the paper you're referring to, Al. On the paper you're referring to, right? Is there any notion or information as to the explanation Dayton Campbell was providing about money being transmitted to Denham Town and Transfer Hall?
Let me say this to you. You come with this little thing every day. You run out and have press conference in a green shirt and green berry and green pants. And let's you your yard and drive out with two other persons and come at Bedmont Road. Let me just say this to you.
Yeah.
Did you ever stop Marlon quietly and think that you heard something on a phone and you come out with it? You know, I hear the next person at the other line, I say nothing but you heard, and you come out with it and you say that is plausible. And you saw something about yourself on social media, and you don't come out to address it, and that has to do with your character. And you know, somebody give me some paper to ask you, are you advisor to a particular minister now in the Ministry of Education?
Let me ask. So the answer is no. So the answer is no. I'm no advisor to any minister at the Ministry of Education. And listen to me carefully now.
Minister of Education.
I just gave you the answer, my brother. The answer is no.
I didn't hear it.
The answer, Al, is no, no. But let me put this to you.
You said no. Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. You said no because somebody passed a piece of paper to give me.
Well, let me put this to you, Al.
Yeah.
There's no amount of propaganda peddling that will cause a player like me to focus on any locus. Yes?
You said that to say what? I hear you giving a contrast about a man and a woman. You know, you really have not.
It's an analogy. Yeah, I was making a point. I was presenting an analogy.
You're going down the wrong road. Here is it that you're giving an explanation, and you didn't mean. You know, a man look a woman, and if that woman get better treatment than what the man are going to give, when should I leave that man? Let me just say something. Politics and looking at a woman is not the same. That is what you brought politics or sex. You see, let me tell you something. When you're talking in the public space,
you know what is the value of an analogy?
I bring politics to, you know.
You know what is the value of an analogy?
Marlon, there's a thin line between politics and business. But let us educate you, young man. There's a thin line between politics and business. And you don't understand that business people, right, has to look at what you call their profit. You don't understand that.
Yeah, man, I understand that. But I want to put this to you. The JUTC is now being fueled, for the most part, the 100 buses that came in last year, in addition to the 100 additional ones. In addition to the 100 additional ones, I'll tell you what it has to do with several pounds of rice, right? They will be fueled by what is called a compressed natural gas. You see, the guys who used to... I am speaking. So you're allowing the bigger point to miss you. You are fixated on making the point that is workers thieving the fuel, so that you are allowing the bigger point to escape you. I want you to not speak while while I am speaking.
Yes.
Do
yes.
not speak when I am speaking.
And the driver them
reduce his volume for me, because he's insufferable and impossible to have a dialogue with. So just to be, he's still flying his mouth. All right, we have another call. We can terminate that call with Al. But just before I come to that other call, the theft of fuel has been one of the major bugbears at the JUTC. Yes? They are no longer able to, the JUTC, to the extent that they are fueled by compressed natural gas. The bus company is less susceptible because you no longer have the diesel fuel oil being stolen by persons, because them have no use for the compressed natural gas basically. So Daryl Vaz announced a couple weeks ago, it was in early March, that there was in excess of 30 million Jamaican dollars that have been realized in cost savings so far at JTC due to a considerable reduction in pilferage, in other words, the theft of fuel. So Jamaica has lost $30 million less. And that is what I wanted Al to hear and understand. But alas, Al is incapable of having a dialogue. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Straight Up.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
All right, yeah, man. Thank you. All right. I listened to your preamble earlier, and it struck me when I heard the Mongolian were over into somewhere in Connecticut, I think, or they call it.
Yeah, man. He was in Hartford, Connecticut, a couple weekends ago, where he was, in the words of some people, he apparently had a meltdown.
And he was making a point that he didn't want to give out what their plans are, because he's afraid that the JLP would use it, and then because you guys' communication is so strong, it will be difficult for them to say that they are the originator of these plans. Now, listening to what Mark Golding and Julian Robinson came to Parliament and did, you know, sometimes when persons are thieving and are doing something, you know, or they intend to do something, they start to cry foul, because they know that, however, that is their plan, to steal and not to say, and then because, and skillfully say, because the communication is so strong, it will be difficult for them to say that they are the originator, right? Because there's no origination from them, right? Because it does not exist, and the originators of these plans is with the JLP, and this is why they're putting out that in the air initially to counter, right? And it now tell me that these persons are really, I don't know, I don't want to call them comment, but this is what it appeared to me. There are...
Because, caller, do you not find it curious, right? That for a set of people who have been in opposition for 9 years, in this dispensation, it has been 4.5 years, that they have not been able to present original ideas and also appropriately costed proposals. So in other words, in order to do this wonderful, fanciful thing, it will cost this. Do you not find that curious?
Very curious. Very curious. And I think Papa Nana made the point earlier that they put a lot of things out there to see what Andrew Olet will come this afternoon with. And they will recraft and adjust to put a figure. And that is what I think they are doing. They don't have any plan. Really, in fact, the JLP locked them out of so much different initiatives.
Yeah, I think George Davis was spot on when he used that word, that what Favour Williams has essentially done is to box out the PNP.
Right, basically. And some things that they said new is addition to see how further they can go with some of the plans that already exist. There is a new creation of any plan, right? And I remember the rent for own was initiated by the JLP with Andrew Michael Wallace. So that's a new plan. That is something already was spoken about and apparently supposed to be sometime this year,
Yeah.
right? Now, the question is that I'm not going big ticket items to be used on the campaign platform, right? Seems to be speedy. And he can't resist the temptation of trying to bring it back, right? Or give it some life by mentioning about Andrew Holness taking the IT to court, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the statutory declaration matter, right? It's crazy because sometimes it's a pain for me to explain to people sometimes that the Integrity Commission, even though quote unquote to be an office of integrity, it does not automatically mean that persons who sit in this office are persons of integrity. They are sometimes surrogates of political parties. And so they are sometimes used to carry out certain behavior to play on the ignorance of the Jamaican population. So Integrity Commission failed to sign the Prime Minister's statutory declaration, right? For
Yeah,
over
they failed
3
to
years.
certify it. Yeah.
Certified, sorry. Certified, right? The Prime Minister's statutory declaration for over 3 years. And the grounds that there is something wrong. All this time they have the TAJ now and the FID, right, to help them in their investigation. And by the way, these bodies
I'm
are
going to
right
ask you
there.
to pause a moment. I gather there is an indication from a commentator elsewhere in media. Because as we know, the Prime Minister speaks in the budget debate today, and perhaps
Right.
he will be treating with some of these matters. But I gather that elsewhere in media, one Emily Crookshields has indicated that the NHT already offers 100% financing to low-income earners. Apparently, just about anyone can access 100% financing to purchase a house in a NHT scheme. So essentially, the opposition leader Mark Golding's deposit fund is essentially redundant. It's totally unnecessary because the NHT already provides certain levels of financing. But alas, we will hear from the Prime Minister when he addresses this and other issues later this afternoon.
Yeah, man. And I'm sorry that I was able to conclude on that. But that's okay. I understand the time is up and up. All right? All right,
Yeah.
Marlon. Yeah, man. Respect.
All right. So thank you for that contribution, caller. Just to indicate, our phone lines will be open again at 10:30 just about, where we will continue to take your calls at 876-212-9824. That is 876-212-9824. And there's also 876-462-0919. We go to the break, and when we come back, we'll have a discussion with Dennis Strong and Dr. Nadine Spence.
Good morning, Marlon. How you doing?
I'm good. And you? How are things?
Everything is okay.
Very well. All right. So, want to start out, Nadine, with your, own assessment, your reaction to the presentation made by the opposition leader on Tuesday to the 2025-2026 budget debate.
Well, I think when I listened, what I thought was, it was a very thorough presentation in terms of the issues that it sought to address, as it relates to what the leader of the opposition pointed out as a commitment to social justice that the PNP was seeking to demonstrate in its budget. Yeah, so there was a lot of presentation of social interventions, I think, that on the face of it seemed to be good responses to matters related to social inclusion, social justice, economic empowerment, and just dealing with matters related to equity and equality in some fundamental ways. And I thought it is important to note that these ideas are good. I know some of them have been announced already and apparently are in train in the government. I've been hearing a lot of pushback there that is concerned.
Yeah.
But even if they're currently being undertaken, it doesn't take away from the fact that the ideas are good. I heard some of them that I could say I have heard that one before. I've heard this announcement before. For example, a conversation about the matter of efficiency. As somebody who works with public bodies and boards, and who, I know that some of those things, in terms of performance centered management and those things, are already in train. And I know that last week, just as I was ending the conversation with you, we were talking about the reform of the Procurement Act, seeking to make doing business much more efficient. And so I know that some of them are actually in training in government, but I think the fact that perhaps they were being repeated speaks to the fact that these are good ideas. And some of them I got excited by.
All right. Yeah.
Like with the NHD and so on. So I think.
All right. Well, especially since you mentioned NHD, I just want to drop an editorial note. Speaking elsewhere in radio, Emily Crooks Shields mentioned that the NHD already offers 100% financing to low-income earners. So just about anyone can access financing to purchase a house in an NHD scheme. So Mrs. Crookshields is contending that Mark Golding's deposit fund is totally superfluous. In other words, it's redundant, it's unnecessary.
Well, yeah, and I've heard comments, even with people that I'm having conversations with since the budget, because I like to talk about things like that, and people, for example, the matter of children getting assistance to go to school. I hear that, I don't know for a fact, you perhaps are better able to tell me, Marlon, that there's already a policy in government which gives assistance to children to get to school. I don't know if that is true. There are some things that I
yes, that is, in fact, for the benefit of the listeners, Nadine, the Prime Minister, speaking on the occasion of the JLP's conference in November of last year, made the point about instituting a rural school bus system, and he mentioned that in supplementing the rural school bus system, because you don't want to box out other players by just having a JUTC, displacing operators who are currently in those spaces, that essentially what he wants is a regime where even public transportation providers, such as taxi operators, they will provide transportation services to youngsters, to school children and so on, but they will do so on the basis of a credit mechanism. In other words, government will be underwriting or subsidizing the commute, but the commute will be provided by players in the public passenger vehicle operation sector. So, and I heard that from Mr. Golding as well. No doubt, in my view, parroting what he would have heard back in November of 2024, vis-a-vis just overhauling and repositioning how rural transportation, particularly for our school children, ensues in that space.
Right. So as I said, I've heard, I know you asked me to speak about the presentation, but there's been a lot of pushback I've seen, where people saying, but this is already in train. This was, so even though the presentation sounded, even though it had those things in it, those ideas are good ideas.
Yeah.
And whether or not, there are certain points of it that I had a challenge with. For example, I found his discussion about constitutional.
All right, yeah, and I'm going to come to that. But before we get to the constitutional reform, because I know you may have some thoughts on that, Nadine, to the extent that you have been one of the players and vocal ones appearing in media on discussion programs such as this and others, right? But just before we come to that, I wanted to appreciate for a moment the fact that ultimately in an election year, the electorate is essentially being called on to entrust a mandate to a set of people based on a platform of ideas and what they intend to do, and indeed other considerations. For example, considering their ability and capacity to deliver on the things they say they are going to deliver on. But Nadine, to the extent that you have an incumbent, doing X, Y, and Z, and the parliamentary opposition, which has been in opposition for no fewer than 9 years, yes, have not come on a platform that sharply distinguishes it and do so in a credible way in terms of appropriately costed plans and proposals. What should the electorate essentially make of that? How much premium should they attach to that platform? A platform that has, as I said just now, not been appropriately costed, notwithstanding 4.5 years in opposition under Mark Golding and 9 years in all since March of 2016.
Well, it was distressing for me. I was speaking on a program the day before, and somebody asked me, what do you expect? And I said, I want to know how the government evaluates the spend. Both the leader of the opposition came with, well, how is it going to cost? And given the fact that we're not working with an
infinite fiscal space.
We're not working with that. We can't. It's not a wish. It's not a fantasy. It's something that we know, and that the opposition could have gotten information. What does our income look like? What are the constraints on the budget? What is the spend? What do we have available to spend? I thought it was reckless, to be honest, to get up and make that presentation without the context of our financial reality. I think that is the point that makes it just say, you cannot assess it in the sense that you would have budget.
And it
so
gives
it was a presentation of very good ideas. Some of them already in motion.
Yes,
but
that's true.
If you assess it as a budget, as an alternative to the budget presented by Fiverr Williams, you couldn't do that.
And that is precisely the observation I made when I contributed to a discussion on radio last evening. I was making the point that, listen, what we are having now is the budget debate. It is called the budget debate for a reason. Budget must mean something. It is a look at the figures, the fiscal parameters within which we're operating, what is available for spending, what the money is being used to do in terms of a prioritization and so on. And it essentially must mean something to say what you're saying within the context of the nation's fiscal realities and what is possible. It is not good enough, in my view, to just throw around the explanation that there are $360 billion in the budget that can be used for discretionary spending. Because I'll tell you why, Nadine. Every dollar in that budget, the money in the budget, right, is tagged to something. So if you are going to come with this list, this wish list, some may call it, as an opposition outfit seeking office, you must tell us what are the things that are currently being done. For example, what production incentives that are currently being provided to the nation's farmers are you proposing to jettison? Which of them are you proposing to scale down and stand down in order to do this $500,000 per young person in relation to down payment on a house? What are you going to give up in order to do this? Come and tell us that. Because I'll tell you why, Nadine. When people like myself were in a similar position in 2016, the JLP was in opposition, and when we came with 1.5, we set out how we intended to make it happen. And the oil hedge that Dr. Peter Phillips, in the administration of Mrs. Simpson Miller, we indicated in an unequivocal way that we are going to discontinue that fool something called the oil hedge, and we're going to take that money and put it in the pockets of the Jamaican people instead. Because instead of the PNP and Dr. Phillips taking up Jamaica's money and putting it into the pocket of this oil hedge provider and the middleman who make a big commission out of it, we're going to discontinue that and put that money in the form of reduced income taxes in the pockets of the Jamaican people, and that we did. I want Mark Gordon to come and do a similar thing. Tell us where you're going to discontinue in order to do these wonderful, fanciful things you're enumerating.
Right. And I think a lot of Jamaicans are asking that question. You know what is surprising me, Marlon, when I hear people talk, is that people are very skeptical about a presentation that for them does not speak to the reality of our financial situation. I hear a lot of people saying, why I can't evaluate it. I can't say nothing about it because I don't know what that is going to cost us. It tells me that
Indeed.
Jamaicans have become very hesitant about a bag of promises. They are not buying it. They want to know how much it's going to cost.
True.
They want to know, even if it is good and it sounds good, can we afford it? And the other thing that was missing from me, Marlon, was the timeline. Over
The
what
buy when.
period
The
of
what
time
and the
are
buy
these-
when. Yeah.
Yes, over what time period of, because I started my, when I'm listening to the budget, I take my notebook.
The jotting down
I
and
was
so on.
looking
Yes,
for
I
it,
did that
right,
on
as
Tuesday
well.
as well.
And time, what was I looking for? Cost, timeline. So I was disappointed and I heard the leader of the opposition going over some of the things that Julian Robinson would have spoken about.
Mm-hmm.
Something that Julian Robinson said he would get into with more details. Because I remember Julian's presentation as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear the details that I
Yeah,
would have
there was something that he mentioned that the opposition leader would be unpacking some more.
Right. But I don't think that I was listening for the unpacking and I
Never
didn't
quite
hear the
materialized.
unpacking.
Yeah.
So because I really was listening for the spend. This is one of the first times I'm listening to a budget. And because I think Favor's presentation was so good in respect of making sure that we understood that there is a fiscal financial reality that we have to contend with, and we must continue the discipline that has brought us to this point. And so people were listening through the lens of how much is it going to cost us? Are you going to find more creative ways than that was pointed out from the Minister of Finance to tell us how you're going to expend the money that is available to us?
Because there's a mega point that it cannot be overlooked. We separate apart from the fiscals, right? This has been the 9th consecutive budget with no new taxes. So one of the things that has to be uppermost in the mind of listeners and viewers as they took in Mark Golding on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, is that all right? Whatever he says he's going to do, how will they do it in terms of identifying the revenue so to do? And will it come at an expense, at an additional cost, at the cost of new taxes? Those are considerations uppermost in the minds of people, in my view.
Yes. I think so. I think people, enough Jamaicans have engaged the idea of the budget and have been concerned with the recovery of our country over the last, perhaps the last 7 years or so. And I think one of the things that Nigel Clark did when he was doing his budget presentation, to be honest, is he thought
he made it relatable.
And I think people now come to it expecting
that kind of engagement.
Okay, what we're going to hear is how we make what we have work for us.
Indeed.
We're not interested in no holy grand things. We want to do what is within our means. We don't want you to come and tell us that you're going to fix every road in Jamaica, because if fixing every road in Jamaica is going to come at a cost of our financial future, we don't want to hear it.
Indeed.
Right? And I think politicians must be seized of that. Right? So when I'm talking to people now about the budget, or people are asking me, what do you think about the budget the other day? And people, all kinds of security guards on campus, people are engaging me about the budget. And they will say to me, boy, me love the idea of them, me love the idea of them, but them so expensive, them so like we can't afford it yet, and I don't want what is happening to us now. We're in a good place. No, I don't want to sacrifice that. I think we must work to make sure we're in a better place. People get it.
Exactly. And because they would have been hurt in the past in terms of the tax package on top of tax package on top of tax package. And the general citizenry do not want to, doesn't want to go back there.
So coming without a costing was problematic.
Yeah, I want to take you now, Nadine, to your baby, the constitutional reform related efforts. You are essentially indicating that the opposition leader made some comments in respect of the approach to and the process so far vis-a-vis constitutional reform. Go ahead on that score.
Right. So I want you to know something. In January, I invited, as a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee in charge of Education and Communication, I invite IDEA International for Jamaica. IDEA International is the international agency that is monitoring constitutional reform efforts globally. So they've been to countries across the world that are engaged in constitutional reform efforts. And when they came to Jamaica, you know, there's been much talk about our phased approach.
Yeah.
One of the things they said, Marlon, was the phased approach appears to be a best practice in constitutional reform. We haven't seen it anywhere else in the world, but the way it breaks up the changes that are necessary to reform the Constitution the way Jamaica expects, it suggests to us that not too much is being piled on to the people for them to lose focus on the changes as they come.
So not too much in one fell swoop.
Not too much in one fell swoop. Because when you are engaging in constitutional reform, you have to be laser sharp on what you're doing. One change can elicit 500 other changes to the Constitution.
That's true. It can trigger a host of other knock-on effects.
Trigger a host of other, yes. So one of the things they spoke about was that this is new, and this seems to be perhaps a strategy. Because one of the other matters they point out is that 90% of constitutional reform efforts fail globally.
Well, what's the percentage?
I think it's about 95% of constitutional reform efforts fail. Right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've been having conversation with them about is, you know, what is the best way to engage? There is a way you engage where you present to people a suggested slate of reform. And then they debate and they decide which one to accept and which one. That is before, especially when you're going to have a referendum.
Yeah.
And there's one where the people give you the idea, you drill out what you can from that, and then you then proceed.
Indeed.
Jamaica's strategy is legitimate any side you take it. So this idea that the concentration efforts that we are engaged
were insufficient,
is superfluous and it's not sincere and we're not doing enough, that is one that came from the opposition and its detractors. And to be honest, it has been very unfair, and it hasn't taken into consideration what is happening globally and what are the best practices in constitutional reform.
Because on the record, there were 8 town hall meetings?
Yes, there were 8, and even as we speak, this ministry continues to engage on the matter of constitution and constitution.
Yeah, because what people need to understand is that separate and apart from going to the public, there are other critical subgroups in the society that attended upon the Constitutional Reform Committee with exchanges with their submissions and so on, right?
Exactly. Because remember we invited people to come, people who had ideas. Nobody was turned away as long as you had an idea.
You had the faith-based groups at any point?
Yes, man. We had. You could WhatsApp your idea, you could email it, you could call and give it. You didn't have to write a paper. You could send an email with some suggestions.
Yeah. I can tell you this, Nadine. I can tell you this. As I sat there wearing the hat that I wear and I listened to opposition leader Mark Golding, I said to myself, having regard to all the things he's saying, right? And the fact that he's saying they're not going to support it, so essentially it's not going to happen. I said to myself, then if the shoe were on the other foot, what does this gentleman think is going to happen?
But that is what I said on another program.
It's absolutely absurd. So you believe that a Marlon Morgan, yes, all things considered, sitting, God forbid, on the opposition benches in the Senate, with Mark Golding as Prime Minister of Jamaica, God forbid in my view, yes, would somehow give a vote to acquiesce to whatever they are coming with, having regard to what they are doing in this dispensation. The gentleman is deluded in my view.
You know what you're pointing
Quite deluded.
out by that? You know what you're pointing out by that is something that he said. The PNP took the matter of constitutional reform into the public sphere in a combative and
antagonistic way.
An antagonistic way. By doing that, you have set up the process to fail. It's not the process itself that failed, you know, it's the conversations around it that has created a kind of
drive a wedge and brings
exactly.
it polarizes rather than brings forces together.
And he very well knows that the way the Constitution is set up, the moment you do that, you have compromised the effort.
I can understand why you think say you are going to make it not happen for in this dispensation for this set of people. But if some other dispensation and another set of people were to come, it will happen then. Guy must be deluded, man. Anyway, I have to leave it there, Nadine.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for those perspectives. But just to be clear, ID International, is it an NGO or a UN related? Is it an NGO?
It's an NGO, but it's UN related.
I see.
If you well, I can't I don't remember what the idea means. So its purpose really is to
observe and the reform efforts around the world.
And if you need their research,
technical capacity
support, then you can call on them, and they will talk. And they have come and talked about our effort and have given us praises for it. To say when they saw the consultation efforts globally are not as expensive as well.
So those who believe that we are going to not become a republic in this iteration, but in some iteration to come, we're going to become a republic with CCJ in tow, if it means that, or if it requires a vote of the opposition senators.
The detailing of that as well was problematic, because there are some Jamaicans who genuinely have a challenge with the CCJ.
There you go.
And I even though I want to move to the CCJ, but I have come to recognize
some people have reservations.
If we genuinely want the CCJ, we have to present the argument in such a way that we bring them along.
Exactly. Inform people and bring them along rather than force it.
We can't dismiss people as stupid or backward because they don't believe.
Or recalcitrant. Yeah.
Exactly. So IDEA is an international organization with a mandate to support sustainable democracies worldwide, and part of what they do is support our armed countries in matters of constitution building and the rule of law.
Excellent. All right, really want to thank you for your input this morning, Nadine. I really appreciate your insights and frank perspectives as always.
Thank you for inviting me.
Very well. All right, so that was Dr. Nadine Spence, a public affairs commentator. Listeners, we're going to run to the break, and when we come back, we're going to seek to make contact with Dennis Chung to have him weigh in with his own reactions to the budget debate, certainly the presentation by opposition leader Mark Golding this past Tuesday. Analyst Dennis Chung, in terms of his reactions to the contribution to the budget debate by the opposition leader this past Tuesday. I gather we have Dennis online. Good morning, Dennis.
Yeah, man. How are you doing, Marlon?
I'm not bad, my friend. How are you? I trust all is well.
Good. Yeah, man, I'm good.
Excellent. All right, so the opposition leader took to the stump, Dennis, in just about 3 hours. He delivered his set. Give us your, reactions, your assessment of the opposition leader's presentation.
Yeah, well, the opposition leader, Mark, did speak to a lot of the issues that need to be addressed. And certainly a lot of them also would have been spoken to previously by the government as issues that need to be addressed. So it seems that there's
convergence.
Right, there's some convergence between the issues. So he did mention, that the reduction in crime is good. Right, I don't think anyone can argue with that. The fact that we've seen over 20% decline in murders is very, very good for the country. I expect in another 2 months that we'll start feeling it on the ground. The road network, of course, that it has not been maintained for a very long time, right, like over 30 years, and that would have impacted. The matter of housing, which I don't agree with the rent to own, right? Which I know was spoken about before, sounds very good, right? But that's going to take some time to implement, because that's not something that.
And I just want to give the listeners some background, not to cut you, Dennis, but just to indicate a study undertaken just about a decade ago by Capri, Caribbean Policy Research Institute, made some proposals or brought this idea to the fore of rent to own, utilizing the resources of and the vehicle that is the National Housing Trust, NHT. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, that one though is going to take a little while, because it means that the NHU will have to tie up a substantial amount of capital
to build out.
Right, to build it out. So that's not an easy one, because it means that you're going to have to say, okay, NHP, you need to commit maybe a few $1 billion, and that you're not going to get back till over a period of time. The one on giving $500,000 to each person up front, I don't know, number one, how practical it is, because, I mean, with the price of houses that are around now, 500,000 is not a lot. But the other thing that it could do, right, so it has to be studied, is that you need to look at the impact on the market. Because if people are getting additional monies, it means that demand will go up.
So the market will respond and make the price point go further north.
So the price point might go further north. So that is something, and that's why I always say that I don't think that it is the right thing for government to interfere in the running of the market, right? So when they talk about government negotiate with the bank to reduce interest rates, that's not something, from when my good friend Fitz was proposing something like that.
The banking fees thing, yeah.
Right, because I don't think that government must get involved in market conditions, because it distorts the efficiency of the market. What I would say though is that when Fiverr herself made her presentation, the first question I asked is, how will it impact on the fiscal account? And therefore, I was happy. The first thing I said I was happy about was that everything that was proposed was within the context of us running a fiscal surplus. So naturally, when I heard all of these things that, I think Mark hit the nail on the head in terms of all the things that need to be done, my first question was, how are we going to fund all of these things?
Because and I want to give some context to it, Dennis, because you're touching on a very good point. I made a point elsewhere in Radio Land last evening. What the PNP is proposing to do, as per Julian Robinson and Mark Golding, is a number of things. But also, on the revenue side, Dennis Chung and listeners, they are proposing to seed considerable bits of revenue, not least, yes, the 11 billion drawdown from the NHT per year, and of course, the employer's tax credit. The move to increase that from the existing 30% to 40% would also see some revenue being seeded. Now, if you are going to be collecting less inflows into the coffers of the government, while at the same time doing exponentially more based on your wish list here, how are you going to make it to work?
Right, and that is my main bone of contention, because central to me, based on the initial question I asked about Fiverr's thing about, is this within the context of fiscal discipline? Remember that a lot of these promises we used to get in the early days, like in the 90s and stuff.
Yeah.
The impact of that was running fiscal deficit, borrowing more money, right? And essentially, it almost drove the economy off a cliff.
There you go. Just doing unsustainable things on the fiscal side, which was ill-advised.
It's not sustainable, because remember what used to happen in that time too, when we had a supplemental, we just lashed the capital budget. And therefore, the poor infrastructure that we're seeing now is as a result of all of that.
I tell you something, Dennis. I tell you something. because I'm not mixing you up in the politics. You can stay where you are ensconced there in football administration and the private sector. But I'll tell you this. I made the point a couple weeks ago in relation to Patterson setting the record straight that one of the things I observed and recall from in the 90s was that the things that were not necessarily sexy, the things that were not necessarily vote-winning things, for example, fixing up courthouses and ensuring that police stations were and other public infrastructure were maintained and kept up, which was essentially capital expenditure, those things were not necessarily attended to. And it is the same slashing of capex year over year that has brought the deterioration in so much of our physical infrastructure that we have seen over the years, which thankfully is being addressed now, particularly police stations being renovated or built in this dispensation.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that is why I think Mark also recognized it in his contribution. That's why I'm saying he's sitting with the right nail, right?
Yeah.
But we have to know what we can do now and what we can do 5 years from now. I mean, we have to budget properly, and this is why it's called a budget debate.
Indeed.
Right? Because the truth is that I would love Marlon to buy, on my site, which I want to buy $20,000 bicycles right now.
Indeed.
But can I afford to do it?
Or what would you give up in order to do it? Would you no longer send your daughter to piano lessons or,
Or school.
Exactly. There you go.
Right, but remember in the 1990s in particular, I mentioned at time too, what we gave up when we did it is that every year until about when the Niger came, 2016 or so.
No,
right?
2018. Niger came 2018. Yeah.
We had a tax package every year. Remember that, and that is what I don't think we remember, that while we were doing all of these things,
it came at the cost of the tax acts.
It came back as tax to us. So I remember even in 2010, right? Just to show that it's not something on
any one side. Yeah.
Right. When the teachers were being awarded a 10% increase, I was publicly said, right, I don't agree with it because it is going to be eaten out in inflation. And this is what we need to be careful of. So when we look at the budget that was presented by Fiverr, that I gave high marks primarily because
the responsibility index,
the context of fiscal surplus.
Yeah.
Right?
So then,
yeah.
complete the thought before I chime in.
And that for me is the critical line that needs to filter through this whole budget debate. That okay, fine, we want to do these 10 things, but let us see how much we can afford, right? Because remember, and the other thing is this: not just did we not get the cost of it, but we didn't get the timing of it. Right?
Yeah.
So it could come down to, okay, fine, we're going to do these things, but don't have to 5 years' time. Or don't have to 6 years' time.
Indeed.
You understand what I'm saying?
Indeed.
So we have to look at it within that context. And for me, the fiscal discipline is key, is central to
everything turns on that, because you want certainty, you want to be able to project. Just last Tuesday, when Fiverr was enumerating the iterations of the increase in the personal income tax threshold from 1.7 to 1.8, then to 1.9 to 2,000. Right. You know what the Prime Minister quipped? You know what he said, sotto voce in the House? This is what you can do with fiscal discipline. You can make projections and commitments going forward. Jamaica wasn't always at that place where we can definitively say, all right, I'm going to move you to this, then to that, then to that, because each iterations of this increase, then is strong in the personal income tax threshold will be to the tune of just about $4.8 billion. So just about $5 billion each time.
I'm going to take you back to what our former Prime Minister, Edward Saga, said. He said, it takes cash to care.
There you go.
Right? And it's very important, and that's how I run my personal life, because you can't predict and plan to do things without a solid financial foundation.
Indeed.
You have to make sure that you have that first. So when you go ahead and you do things you can't afford, even people in their personal lives, Marlon, they take on loans that they can't afford.
Yeah, I heard you elsewhere in Radioland yesterday, Dennis, even making the point that, listen, you place such a premium on the credibility and the responsibleness of what is before you. You did not get caught up in those Ponzi schemes of yesteryears.
No, because I said to people, listen, and this is what this is what I was saying, Marlon, in terms of I said we need to know what this is going to cost, because me myself, if I'm investing in something, right, and this is why I don't get caught up in the Ponzi scheme. I said to people at the time, listen, when they said to me, why are you investing in it? Because giving me 10% a month, I said, listen, anything I can't see, I set up audited financial statements for, which we can't with the can't amount, so the numbers being presented. I am not putting my money there, and therefore anything that anybody comes to me and says, I want to see the numbers behind it, because I'm an accountant.
Yes.
Right? That's my profession. So I don't go based on somebody telling me something, because they said
talk anything. Right? And I put it to you, Dennis, because as I said, I was listening to you elsewhere in Radioland yesterday morning, and the deputy spokesperson on finance for the parliamentary opposition, Cleveland, Tomlinson, was making the point that, listen, the PNP will have other fora and indeed other forum in which it can essentially unpack and provide the numbers. But I wanted to think of the budget debate, Dennis, as a major event. It's like what prom is for a high school student in the United States. Yes, it is what graduation is. It is a big moment. So especially in an election year, why would the parliamentary opposition, yes, is it not curious that they would have these plans, put together manifesto commitments, as it were, but not come to the budget debate, where the budget debate is all about the numbers, what is possible, what is doable, and so on, and not have this critical element, but instead wish to tell us wishy-washy things about subsequent forum. How can you be telling us the price tag on some program in Radioland or some town hall meeting, rather than the mega stage of the budget debate, the parliament of the land, insofar as the opposition leaders presentation? How can that make sense?
Well, I mean, it's not prudent to do that, not only from the point of view of the listenership, but from the point of view of the person presenting, because you would have had the budget, the presentation at the budget, which is the biggest stage, which everyone is tuned into.
There you go.
I mean, and you lose the opportunity to.
And I'm a PR man, so I know the importance of the big stage. When you got Sumfest, you have to go on with the things them at Sumfest. A big stage,
more than like the Marlon, when the numbers are being presented later, and I'm at the ride in my bicycle.
There you go. No little dibby song. You can left the big Sumfest or the big, you know.
Yeah, so it was a lost opportunity, I think, to engage, right? Because remember, after the presentation was made, everyone was saying on social media, how much is it going to cost? Because people are very aware now. Because remember, in the last 8 to 9 years, we've had a situation of no new taxes.
Yeah.
We've become used to fiscal surpluses. We've become used to the debt to GDP going down.
Yes.
We've become used to, because the debt to GDP
and people have grown accustomed to some give backs as well, some certain give backs. So as opposed to money coming out of pockets, money has been going back in pockets.
So people are very aware now, are asking the question, okay, fine, what is it going to cost? Right? I am not saying people obviously are having issues out there, because, I mean, the global market is uncertain.
True, yes.
It is not going to be solved, and I'll come back to the 2010 also, when the 10% increase was given to teachers. You don't solve people's ongoing financial issues by giving them money without productivity increases. That's not going to work. So if you take out money now and give to people and say, okay, take this, it will last them maybe for a month.
That's
After
it.
that, inflation is going to eat it out.
Yeah. All right, Dennis, I want to take up on this issue, because having presented a budget without, definitive and indicative cost or price tags, what the PNP, and I heard it from opposition leader Mark Golding even last evening when he spoke on a social media platform, that they are going to be utilizing the discretionary powers essentially that each budget presents. I wanted to share with our listeners what are we referring to when we speak about a quantum of funds that essentially constitute discretionary spending, because a budget is broken up into certain elements. I think it is wages and salaries, there's the amount for debt servicing, like your interest payments, there is capex, and then there are programs. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So this discretionary spending, unpack that for our listeners, because Cleveland and Mark Golding and others, they are seeking to bank on this notion of discretionary spending. And I have made the point this morning, Dennis, just before you come in, that listen, when you tell me about discretionary spending, you need to tell me what is currently programmed to be done in this budget that a PNP government would axe or jettison. Because when we were in opposition in February of 2016, we told the country that this oil hedge that the PNP spent our money on, we did go discontinue that. That never did go keep anymore under an Andrew Holness-led JLP government. And we said so, and that is what we did in March 2016 when we marched into Jamaica House. And we're unequivocal on that.
Yeah, so I don't know that. I mean, I heard Cleveland mention that discretionary spending of maybe about.
Well, Mark Golding said 360 billion last evening.
Yeah,
Cleveland said 400 billion on nationwide.
I don't know that is there. I mean, that amount of money is significant. The budget is what, 1.2 trillion?
1.2, just under 1.3 trillion.
Right.
Well, what he's saying is that it is really the program's budget. And that's why I am pressing them to say, well, what is being done now that you are going to do differently, scale down or jettison? Exactly.
So program, the discretionary amount that they're talking about already would have been assigned to certain things.
Exactly.
So
allocated for certain.
Exactly. So therefore, if you're saying that you're going to spend that, then logically you have to cut out the other things. And this is why I'm saying it is a give and take, right? And we need to understand. And let me tell you something. If the Minister of Finance had come and presented something and I saw that it was going to create a fiscal deficit, I would have said, no, this can't work. Because we know that if there is
irresponsible.
a massive fiscal issue, it has to come from somewhere. And I don't want to pay no more in taxes like I used the first time.
There you go. And you don't want the uncertainty either, Dennis. It is good when a business can sit down and you plan your investment horizon, you plan your build out, your expansions in your operations, and you don't have to be, in trepidation as to, all right, what are they going to hit next?
Right. So it's important, and this is why when Fiverr was coming, I was saying, boy, listen, we need to ensure fiscal discipline. Similarly, the tune throughout the whole thing with the opposition leader, the Prime Minister when he comes today, fiscal discipline, because as a country we can't afford to go back to our Marlon in 2013. I was at the PSOJ, and I know what almost happened because I was in the middle of the negotiation.
Oh, yes, I can imagine. And with all the prior actions that had to be done.
And I mean, kudos to Dr. Phillips, because if we did not get over that hurdle, I can tell you, we would not be very far from getting to where Haiti is.
There you go. And the truth of the matter is that the prior actions were important as well, which was why you had a renaming from the JDX to the NDX, which was JDX 2.0.
And let us give a lot of credit to Prime Minister Golding. He did do a lot of changes that were, we haven't spoken about enough, on the fiscal side to make sure. I mean, the disposal of Air Jamaica and sugar, for example, people don't understand how great that was,
Yeah, I've said it on this program. There were some loss-making, some legacy debt, considerable loss-making public assets. You'll recall Don Webby being in the cabinet at a point in time to divest CTL. Well, there you go. And there was CTL, Cayman and Shack Limited. As you mentioned, Dennis, there was Air Jamaica, which you were instrumental in offloading. There were the sugar assets through Pan Caribbean. And there were such things as the legacy debt from Cricket World Cup, Soapberry, way. Clarendon Alumina. What is it called?
Yeah.
Partners or production? Clarendon Alumina is partners.
Partners,
Read the forward
partners.
sale of
Yeah,
bauxite.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there were a host of legacy debt that had to be treated with in order to set the stage for what eventually came in 2010, which was a fiscal responsibility framework, which ultimately fed into the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act, and then the fiscal rules during Dr. Phillips' stint at Wickett.
Yeah.
So we have come a far way, and we can't afford to reverse these gains.
It really started, and the whole fiscal program started from when Harley was there and Bruce, and then
Dr. Phillips and Mrs. Simpson Miller.
Dr. Phillips continued it.
Yeah.
You know, and we've been on that path. So we can't afford now to go back from before 2010. We can't afford that.
Indeed.
We have to make sure that anything that we do now has the whole fiscal discipline at the heart of it.
Which is why I'm personally delighted that we have the Fiscal Commission and the concept of EPOC, which we had back in between 2013 and 2015, was also instrumental. Well, 2016 was also instrumental. But we have to leave it there. Dennis, I really want to thank you, my brother, for your insights as always this morning.
Yeah, man, no problem, Marlon.
Indeed.
No
All right, thank you. Listeners, that was Dennis Chung, noted financial analyst and essentially a public affairs commentator. He was speaking with us, giving us his reactions to the presentation in the budget debate by opposition leader Mark Golding. We're going to run to the break, and when we come back at 11:10, we're going to have a Talitha Wilson. She is the parent, listeners, of a Down syndrome, a little boy who has Down syndrome, and Talitha is also a member of the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation. And remember the significance of this discussion. Tomorrow is commemorated as World Down Syndrome Day. So tomorrow, 21st March, is being so commemorated. And so we are putting the spotlight on this issue this morning, albeit briefly. Good morning, Talitha. Welcome to Straight Up.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Very well. Thank you for making yourself available. Well, share with us, you have a child who has this condition. Share with my listeners who may not be apprised as to what Down syndrome is, what the condition is, how it presents, and then we get into some of your experiences as a parent and what some of the challenges are in that regard.
Okay, so my son is 24 years old at the moment, a young adult.
Yeah.
And yes, he has Down syndrome since birth, because that is what it is. The condition is, it's a chromosome that it's a chromosome, an extra chromosome that they developed while we are pregnant, and hence we have a child with Down syndrome.
Okay, it's a chromosome that attaches and that ensues during the gestation, during the fertilization process.
Right.
Yes. All right, and it presents in physical ways. It makes a child appear differently than, how a person would appear in the orthodox sense. And many of us would have seen and interacted with people with the condition Down syndrome, so we essentially know what it entails, essentially. Now, before I come to your experience as a mommy, give us a sense as to the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation, the kind of support it provides, and how you came into contact, essentially, with the foundation.
Okay, so Down Syndrome Foundation was first observed in 2006. I got contacted with them in 2009. So we have been around for a while. The organization is a non-profit organization, and we help families with financial needs, and also there's awareness for the new mothers, the new mommies with children with Down syndrome.
All right, and you found your experience with them edifying. You found that you have benefited richly over the years from your proximity to and interactions with the foundation?
Yes, I have, and they have been extremely well with us. They take care of us. We are one knitted family. We even have WhatsApp group where we speak about the children and give advice to other parents. So we are one knitted family. That foundation have done a lot for all of us throughout our lifetime with them.
All right. Just for my own edification, can you give a sense as to whether persons with the condition Down syndrome have different degrees of impact in terms of, shall I put it as, disability, in that some may be able to function in ordinary environments, for example, attending school and, acquiring content in the regular teaching and learning environment. How does it appear in persons? Do you have different manifestations across the individuals with Down syndrome?
Okay, so each child with Down syndrome is different. So you may have some that my son actually he went to regular basic school, then he transitioned to special ed for primary and for high school.
I see.
They do stuff just like everybody else. It's just that they learn different. They all do stuff different, but we all accomplish one goal at the end of the day.
All right, tell me about the household now. So, like, would your child be able to do the dishes, make up his own bed as a teenager and son?
My child clean his own room, he wash his own clothes, he cooks his own dinner, and he loves to bake.
Can do a thing at fireside? Wow.
Could you repeat for me?
No, I was just commenting that him can handle himself in the kitchen.
Yes, he does. He does a lovely banana bread, to be exact. He does barbecue pork well.
And I suspect there are some folks, though, who may have the condition and are not able to maneuver in the ways your child is able to. Am I correct?
Yes, we do have children like that. Yes, we do.
I see. But notwithstanding, it ends up being quite demanding, and therefore, special ed is, one of those appropriate vehicles through which they can, attain a degree of learning in terms of, education and able to come into consciousness a certain way in terms of maneuvering as adults.
Right. So early stimulation is the best thing. So once you start early with them, it is possible for you to be able to get things from them in terms of like independence.
Yeah, or getting them to be responsive and assimilating and doing things.
With all children, though. As I said before, everybody learns differently.
The experience is different.
And it is a support that you get as well.
All right. So I gather, Tarita, that there is a particular campaign happening this time around in relation to commemorating World Down Syndrome Day tomorrow, 21st March. Yes?
Okay.
Tell us about this Lots of Socks campaign, how it all started and what's going on with that.
So Lots of Socks campaign is a campaign just to give for persons to be more aware of our Down syndrome persons, people in the public.
Yeah.
So let me just 1 second.
Sure,
so people can participate by wearing colorful, fun, and mismatched socks to show solidarity. So we want the schools, the businesses, and the wider public to be encouraged to join us by sharing photos on Instagram and tag us as well.
So on your social media platform, Instagram.
Right.
I see.
Right. Lots of socks. Right.
All right, just to be clear, the reason why the sock is the go-to article is that there's a biological, or shall I say, a scientific aspect to this, because chromosomes do appear in a manner that, resembles a foot of socks, do they not?
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
so that should share with our listeners on that score.
Right, so and the extra chromosome that our lovely young people have, it looks like a pair of socks, hence why we use the socks at all times.
Yeah.
When you look in the microscope, it looks just like a sock.
Yeah, man, because I've seen that on media, traditional media and on social media as well. So hence the whole sock campaign.
Right.
All right, and I mean, with tomorrow, what degree of success would you want to see the initiative have in terms of raising awareness and sensitivity in Jamaica? Because that's one of the things we grapple with, Talitha. When we do have conditions or disabilities of one kind or another, we know how it presents in social settings where the person with the condition is in some instances stared at in an awkward way. Of course, you may have extreme maladaptive behavior in terms of persons at school, bullying them or picking on them, that kind of thing. What would you want to come away from tomorrow with, and just the work generally of the foundation here in Jamaica?
What we would want person to accept our children and our young adults. We would like to be included in education and health. That is what we're pushing for. So that is what I would like to see come from tomorrow, that persons are aware of them and we get some support from the wider community for our educational activities that we have for them and for our health. So they would like to send us a donation, you can send us, you can call 978, you can, what is the number again? 978-7217, or Instagram page at Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation, or email jadownsyndrome@gmail.com. We would really accept some donation from anybody out there for our health and education towards our families, towards our children with Down syndrome.
All right, advise me something, Talitha.
Sure.
Especially as the mom of a young adult who has the condition Down syndrome, right?
Yes.
Do we have adults ultimately who go on to, shall we say, lead fairly normal lives? Like, for example, let us consider the world of work. Whether it is that they may operate a business venture for themselves or work for someone else, are persons with Down syndrome able to fit into the world of work?
Yes, they are able. If they are given the chance, they are able to do that, because my son and other persons in the Down syndrome group, they have worked before. My son worked at Kingston Bookshop, and he also works at Sangsters. We have another one who she have her own painting business, and we also have another one who she works with digital and a couple more places. So yes, they can be a part of society in the working world. We're just asking for a chance for them.
And how is socialization among them? When your youngster used to go to school, for example, and even now, does he have other siblings?
My son,
your son, yes.
Yes, he does.
Very well. And how is the socialization? Do they like? Well, let me not even ask. How is the socialization? Let's speak to us on that.
They are one. They play together. They sing together.
So they interact as one. Okay,
they interact. They are one.
And of course, he has his own personality. He has his own television programs that he would like, and so on as well, right?
Right, because he wants to be a YouTuber, so he's working on that.
Oh, a content creator on YouTube.
Right,
very well.
So they live a perfect normal life if they are given the chance.
Well, that is good. And of course, I would imagine that you'd want to see even more being done from a special ed standpoint to better cater to in the formal school settings youngsters who may be afflicted with Down syndrome.
Yes, I would love to see that, because we have some of our young persons who are not yet in school because they are unable to be registered in a school. So I would love to see the education system help us to get our children in school.
All right. Well, I really want to thank you for those perspectives. Do you have any other closing out comment or appeal that you'd like to make? You have indicated to the listening public, Talitha, that they may reach out to the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation for donations or contributions of one kind or another. 876-978-7217. And they may also email you, and you are
jadownsyndrome@gmail.com.
So that's jadownsyndrome@gmail.com. And there's also this Instagram handle,
right at JA Down Syndrome.
Very well.
Because there's a lot of stuff that we do for our parents. We have counseling sessions and bi-monthly meetings and stuff like that. So we would really appreciate any donation that we get to continue
to
with
help
this
you
for
guys
our
to
parents.
engage and share experiences with each other. And you have found that experience as well, that community, that network of parents who are parents or guardians of persons afflicted with Down syndrome here in Jamaica. You have found that network and exchange of experiences and ideas quite useful, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Indeed. All right, well, all the best for tomorrow. Tomorrow is, of course, being commemorated, listeners, as World Down Syndrome Day, and this is a way of honoring and, of course, raising awareness on the question of this condition, Down syndrome, and helping, of course, parents and guardians like Talitha to provide the support and care that they provide to family members and the persons in their care who are afflicted with Down syndrome. All right, so thank you so much, Talitha. Wishing for you and the entire team the very best for tomorrow, and of course taking the opportunity to appeal to the listening public that they may make contact with the Jamaica Down Syndrome Foundation at 876-978-7217, or you may also email them at jadownsyndrome@gmail.com, and you may contact them on Instagram. Their handle is essentially at jadownsyndrome, so you can hit them up on Instagram and reach out to them. Thanks so much, Talitha. Wishing for you and the entire gang all the best tomorrow.
Thank you very much for having us.
Very well. So that closes out our conversation on this issue. We are going to be heading back to the phone lines, listeners, taking more of your calls through to the end of the program. 876-212-9824. There is 876-462-0919. Remember, the Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, takes to the stump later this afternoon, and he will deliver his contribution to the 2025-2026 budget debate. I gather we have a call online. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Straight Up.
Mr. Marlon, morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yeah. You see, when I think you guys, I tell Canada this too. Your co-host, I tell him this.
Yeah, man.
When I get people to analyze, get people who we can't predict what them are going to say. You understand?
That is a good point.
When you get somebody like Nadine Spence, we don't know what Nadine is going to say.
Oh.
When you get people like Brian Chang,
Kevin O'Brien Chang, yeah?
Yeah, we know what you're going to say a long time.
All right.
When you are, we know what you're going to say.
Yeah,
so you have to get people
excellent point. All right, let me ask you this, Sir Marsh.
Can you,
yeah, man, I understand that, but hold on. We are having a dialogue, and so the truth is that you would call in and you would, present issues, make observations, you can ask a question, and the same can ensue on my side, right? So what I'm saying to you now, Sir Marsh, can you think of someone who is more predictable than Ralston Hyman? Just think about it for a minute. Think about it for a minute.
With economy. And Ralston Hyman deal with economy.
So Kevin O'Brien don't deal with the economy?
No, man.
Not Kevin O'Brien, Dennis Strong. Dennis Strong don't deal with the economy?
Yeah, well, Dennis Strong deal with, he deal with the economy. Right?
Yeah.
But the point I'm talking about, not about Nadine Spence now. We know what you're going to say. Yeah, Nadine Spence sit around the same table. You guys are a part of the Jamaica Labour Party. We don't expect no criticism from this one. That's
why we have you on the program now, Marsh. Alright, so watch me now, Marsh.
Yes. So
let us hear your criticism.
No, listen, don't take away all of my time.
No, we're not do that, Maji. We have, we have the time and you have the platform. So that's why I'm inviting your criticism.
Okay, you speak a while ago, you talk about the plan must have went 2016 and went so that you wouldn't continue with the oil edge.
Yeah, it's an example I will give you. In other words, may I demonstrate to you, Maji.
Yes.
Yeah, may I demonstrate to you.
Deception is, deception come. Deception come, you don't continue to pay, but you continue to collect it in the name of oil edge.
My brother.
That is not right. That is robbery.
My brother, let's understand this.
No, answer my question.
Well, so that me do, G. We're having a conversation. So watch me now. The PNP imposed an ad valorem tax on fuel, and in rationalizing the tax, they indicated that they were going to be using it to attain or purchase a oil hedge. Yes, this government came into office. The ad valorem tax has been in place. It has discontinued the oil hedge, and the resources generated from the proceeds of that oil hedge, not the oil hedge, the proceeds of that ad valorem tax on fuel, that special tax on fuel, is supporting the government's fiscal program. And Sir Marsh, the government, yes, is unequivocal on that matter. The oil hedge, the tax, the gas tax, yes, is what is helping to put money back in the pockets of the Jamaican people, and we are about that life and nothing else.
But you collect in the name of
come with the other criticism. No man. We collect it in the name of the government of Jamaica. When elections are contested and when elections are won, a government gets the imprimatur. It gets the blessing of. It gets the authority of the people of Jamaica, and that is why the government is able to collect taxes and not Mark Golding down at oil.
No, I change the goalpost in the middle of the game because in the campaign, you say you wouldn't continue the island.
We're not going to. We said we're not going to be using it for that purpose.
You never said you would have collected.
Sir Marsh,
no,
you're speaking with Sir Marsh. Let me share this with you. You're speaking with one of the back office operators, a serious bit of strategist, right? So let me be clear to you and to the rest of the listeners.
Let's not talk to one of the big general.
Well, Anna man, you can use your choice adjectives, and that is fine. But watch me now. It's the outcome I am dealing with, right? So watch me now. I am putting it to you that a quantum of funds, the proceeds of the ad valorem tax, the special tax on fuel, the proceeds of that were thrown away by the PNP in relation to the purchase of the oil hedge.
I don't know that because everything the PNP do wrong.
And everything the PNP do wrong,
no.
And everything the PNP do wrong. And I said it 2 weeks ago, the PNP established the NHF.
We are not fool. When you get up and talk about
the PNP established the national housing.
The
national health fund.
Listen to me now. When you guys get up and talk, new tax. No new tax.
That's
Tell me something. No, I answer me this. How comes only get more tax from what the PNP used to collect?
Excellent. Do you want to pause now and benefit from a bit of learning?
Hold on, let me put the whole light in one. Let me put the whole line because I have to take the rest of the time. When I say no new tax, you're going to collect more tax than what the PNP used to collect. And I think I can tell you why before you answer me.
No, man, but one at a time. One at a time.
No, they used to say that when budget time come around, one man says a certain thing. Now, what the JLP do is collecting the tax every day. That's why when the people go to the supermarket...
But Marsh, every government collects tax every day.
Hold on. Listen, that's why when we go to the supermarket...
Marsh, I'm share a little secret with you.
Don't cut out this. Let the people...
We're not cut out nothing, man. Go ahead, let the people hear you. Let the people hear.
That's the price of food rates daily. Gasoline rates daily and all of them things. So that's why only get to collect more tax. But the people life become harder. You can't come on and tell you that people life becomes easier in Jamaica.
All right, Sir Marsh.
Life becomes harder under the Jamaica Labour Party.
Sir Marsh.
You can go ahead now.
May I speak now?
Yeah.
Yes, when you say the things you said a while ago, I don't think you quite understand or appreciate how happy you make me. You see, when I look at a video and the opposition leader, your comrade leader, makes the remarks he made the other day in Hartford, Connecticut, I don't think you guys quite understand and appreciate how delighted you made me.
Edward Seaga met
So soon come back, man. May God bless and rest Mr. Seaga's soul. May God rest Mr. Seaga's soul. But let me come back to what I'm saying. Cause one other point. Sir Marsh, last night, I took up my phone, yes, and I saw the opposition leader on a social media program, Andre Stevens' program, right? It shows me and underscores for me that desperation is as desperation does. So when Marsh says on a call with me on the 20th of March that the government is collecting tax every day, which is precisely what every single solitary striking government around the world does every day, it shows me that we have a set of people at a place where we would want to have them, and we are endeavoring to keep them there. So I'm going to be keeping you where you are, Marsh. Believe you me on that. Because a man is on the phone on national radio lamenting government collecting tax every day. But for the benefit of the other listeners, Sir Marsh, I'm going to indicate, yes, that there's a difference between tax rate and tax take, and the two should not be confused. Mark Golding sought to mislead the Jamaican people 2 budget cycles ago, and he did it 2 consecutive years. This year is the only year he basically didn't come with it, where he repeated the falsehood.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, yes, sir, Marsh.
You are Nadine.
Nadine, she pronounced her name Nadine.
All right, Nadine. Nadine, she's brilliant in ventriloquism. Likewise yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so not brilliant in that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talk about the NHT money that Mark say he would discontinue.
Yes, that's right.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would the JLP continue with that 11 billion next budget?
The answer is yes, Sir Marsh. In fact,
no, it would stop.
Sir Marsh, Sir Marsh, but hold on now.
They were not going to continue.
Sir Marsh,
don't tell me the lie,
hold on, Sir Marsh.
Marlon, don't tell me the lie.
Mr. Marsh, you have said what you have said. May I respond? Allow me to respond. George Davis of Nationwide News Network. Sir Marsh, he said something. But understand, I'm sharing something for you to get some information. Alright, forget the name. Let me redact the name. Sir Marsh, for the benefit of this conversation, I am redacting the name.
Have a great day, Marlon. It's nice talking to you. You are still my friend, you know.
Sir Marsh, you are my friend and brother, but I want to redact the name. I think I've run past my break, Madam Producer. Sir Marsh, I want you to hold the line. No, hold the line. Let us just hold the line, Sir Marsh. I want to.
Have a great day.
Sir Marsh, let's go to the break up. Good. What's on the mind this morning?
St. Catherine South.
Yes, St. Catherine South. What's happening, man?
Yes, Mr. Alan, Mr. Marsh. Why are they so desperate, man?
Well, you see, the challenge I have is when they exhibit it so much. You can keep your powder dry, maintain a poker face, just come and engage, bring your perspectives and so on. Al is, in my view, incapable of facilitating a dialogue. You say one thing, then the program host say another thing, and just keep it going like that. I'll just want to talk from start to finish. Him not have no comma, him not have no full stop, just one long run-on paragraph.
No, Christian saying
Nothing. Anyway.
Alan Marsh, you know, them all time Michael Manley, man, you know, you have to see with them.
Yeah, man, that's fine. As they are, they're well within their right to be. We just want to take and use the platform South St. Catherine to inform them. Because, for example, Marsh is lamenting the government collecting more in taxes. And I'm saying to Sir Marsh, in his absence from the phone line, and I trust he's still listening to his radio, that Mr. Marsh and listeners generally, collecting more taxes is the whole point of operating a country and running government. Because taxes is precisely what? Yes? Government revenue, which is essentially taxes, and that run the country. The light bill that the various schools have on, the lights that are on, that is what keeps the light on. Yes? The new track down at stadium or wherever else, it is money from the treasury of the country that do those things. when you send JUTC, Bosco, St. Thomas, and Castleton, is tax dollars do it. So now, the tax rates have not changed in this country. In fact, tax rates have been reduced since this Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government has taken office in March 2016. What we have had is a management of the economy in such a way that there's more economic activity being generated in the country, and as people do business, for example, spending them tax break back in the country, more GCTs collected, more taxes are being collected. As more people earn money and start buy car, as has been the case with many police officers, many teachers, many public sector workers and other people up and down the country, as that happens, South St. Catherine, people go to the gas station and then pay the fuel tax that Mr. Marsh is lamenting.
You talk about police station. When last have you been to the...
Sir, you can't find parking at police stations.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, you can't even find parking. Every police have...
From constable right through to soup. Everybody a drive.
Yeah, everybody. Because the learning institution, them just call them in and say, come, we can learn you this or we can learn you that, because it's not like one time when police get in a $300.
Like when my father was a corporal of police and a sergeant of police and a bata under PJ Patterson's Jamaica.
When have you been to this school, you can't even get a parking, Mr. Morgan. Everybody.
Sir, you can look. One of the biggest challenges right now, when you go to any government agency, whether a ministry, a police station, a school where teachers are employed, parking on the grounds of those respective organizations are challenging right now, because more and more of our Jamaican brothers and sisters are step up in their life. And as we know, next to a house, South St. Catherine, there is nothing to a Jamaican like a car, a motor vehicle.
Oh, Mr. Morgan, I say to you already,
Yeah.
God has seen me I cry, if I wouldn't be a labourite, I have to be a labourite, God has seen me.
Alright, that's what I mean. South St. Catherine.
I want to come on here right now,
Alright, 20 seconds. You have 20 more seconds. South St. Catherine.
Something.
Yeah, make it quick.
The debate that is going on in the parliament.
In the house, yeah, man. Mm-hmm.
It is between what? The opposition
and the government, Maji, yeah.
But I don't see like that.
Mm-hmm.
I see where the Jamaica is debating against the British. Because
probably have to explain on some more to us tomorrow. Link me tomorrow. We'll be on tomorrow. South St. Catherine will be on tomorrow. Link me and unpack that one a bit more, because it sounds like an interesting setup. Jamaica versus its former colonial administrators and enslavers, the British.
The two pickup that is on the Irish, the United team. They are from Britain.
All right, cool. So Julian Robinson, yes, is of British descent, and so too is Mark Jefferson Golding, the man called Marky G. We run to another call. All right, good morning, caller. Welcome to Straight Up. Hello, good morning. You're on. Hello, good morning. All right. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Straight Up. You're on.
Morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Go ahead with your perspectives this morning.
Yes, sir. My thing is that if I were, say, the finance minister, I pretend to be a finance minister, there's some areas that I would definitely have to speak on.
Sure. Such as?
Right? Well, the first one, it would be like the macro and micro economy. So that's what call that one of the E then. I would have to speak on energy.
Oh.
That's one another E. Yeah, and I would have to speak on the environment.
Except, sir, you get catch, because Julian does not have environment in one of his E's.
Well, I would have to speak on the environment.
But then again, you're speaking about you. and not so much Julian. But go ahead, because you get catch just now. Andrew Holness has environment. Listen what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Andrew Holness had the environment, sir, as one of his E's back in August 2012. But because you never do your homework closely and carefully enough, you think that Julian articulated the environment as one of his E's. But it is not so, sir. But go on with the fourth E. Let me hear now.
You may know. You are jumping the gun, you know. Because I didn't mention Julian.
Sir, sensible people connect dots.
Julian? How you come to that conclusion?
Caller, sensible people, their job, and indeed my job, is to connect dots. My job is to know what you don't know.
If you know what me don't know.
That is right.
Yeah, what? Yeah, God?
No. Go ahead with the fourth E. Go ahead with the fourth E.
What I'm trying to say to you, listen to me. What I'm trying to say to you, so some of the pillars then of economics, right? Some of the E's, right?
Yes, sir. Some of the payoffs in economics?
No, E's, some of the pillars.
Oh, pillars. Yeah, man. Honestly, yeah, man. Right. Cool. Respect, yeah?
Right. So anybody that's going to speak then and say finance, general governing of the country then, would have to touch certain critical areas. Am I making sense to you?
You're making absolute sense, sir. However, the framework within which you operate, why would it be the very framework articulated some 13 years ago by someone else? In other words, Holness presented 5 E's and you come and talk about your growth strategy centering on these 4 E's. And of course, as we heard on Tuesday, caller, the opposition leader, Mark Golding, added a 5th E, ethics.
Right, which is good. I'm saying to you, anybody that's going to speak on anything to deal with economics, they are free to use any amount of E's they want to use. You could use equity. You could add any more E's to it if you feel to put that into the equation. So nobody didn't copy anybody.
I see.
Those are the pillars that govern economics. Anybody who do economics to a certain level would have known that.
So tell me something, caller.
Yes,
when I mentioned ethics just now, right? You essentially endorsed it. So share with my listeners what ethics speak to. What do you understand when we speak of ethics? Give us your assessment of that.
Ethics basically is certain principles that you use that have to do with the norms of the society.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to pause at this juncture, right? Because the opposition leader introduced this 5th E, ethics. Now I have a few questions here for Mark Golding. How ethical is it, Mr. Golding, to have told Jamaicans that they should not have 1 foot in the King's Yard and 1 foot in Jamaica, while you, Mark Golding, held a Jamaican passport in one pocket and your British passport in your other pocket? Question number 2, caller. No, question number 2. I put in the questions and then you can answer. How ethical is it to be complaining about Jamaica's food import bill while at the same time you and Senator Peter Bunting are the principals of a company that is involved in the very importation and sale of food that you complain about? How ethical is it? How ethical is it to be passing off yourself as a paragon of virtue while you have not been open and transparent regarding your personal wealth and estate, which you have conveniently tucked away in an offshore trust? Those are just 3 of 6.
Push too much one time. All right, let me give you the last one.
Yeah, man.
What about that certain guy when he had your party where all of his assets, and most of them tuck away in some small islands?
So that has been addressed. So that has been addressed. That is a wrong one to choose. Choose the second one. Tell us about the food import bill, or tell us about the passport.
I will deal with that. No.
Go back to the passport.
The minister, that way him and his son importing chicken back and all sorts of things in the island and flooding the market and crippling the small farmers with them 2 chickens. What do you have to say about that?
That certain minister, if that is in fact so, is undertaking a legitimate business venture. And what we want is for increase levels of local production so that that certain minister no longer has a great incentive to be importing anything into Jamaica for sale.
People them out of can't sell anything, and they can't compete with the price that these people. So they flood the market.
So which is why you address that issue, sir, by doing more for agriculture in the country. For example, bring more acreage into production by way of irrigation. There are 1,500 acres between St. Catherine and Clarendon. There is essentially 2,400 acres between St. Elizabeth and Manchester, and then elsewhere in St. Elizabeth, the Pedro Plains, I gather, another 6,000 acres, I believe, for irrigation.
Really. But let me answer something.
Yeah, man, sure. Go ahead, my friend.
Agriculture. You know why most farmers cannot compete? Because
you have a minute, because we want to take another call, Chief.
America is flooding down here with cheap goods.
And I already gave you the solution to compete.
It's hard. It's very, very hard to finance agriculture.
So do you believe that we should just add a little thing to imported food into the country?
No, what we need to do, when we are negotiating with IMF and things, we stop devaluing money to the lowest.
But remember, we stop dealing with IMF now insofar as a borrowing relationship. Anyway, thanks for the perspective, sir. I'm going to invite you to call tomorrow again. We're going to be on tomorrow. I like your, the issues you're putting to before and the responses you're providing as a person who is sympathetic to, you know who.
No,
so thanks for your perspective.
We are not propaganda.
Propagandist. Yeah, man. All right, caller. One love. Good. We go to another call as we head up to the midday closeout point of the program. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Welcome to
Senator Morgan. You shouldn't just ask the gentleman that was talking to you a little while if that is honest also for a gentleman which was here for years now, holding, every time you ask him about his citizenship, he take out his black Jamaica passport and hold it up. Until a Sunday evening when somebody from the newspaper tackle him and he get a very good opportunity Tuesday gone to tell us whether 1 foot is in King Charles Yard or 2 foot in a Jamaica yard. All right, me leave you there. Come this evening, 2 o'clock.
Yes.
Robert Nestor Morgan tell Mr. Hughes just a few minutes ago that the way the Jamaican Labour Party have governed Jamaica, we're going to get more money to fix road in a Jamaica. Pam, pam, pam. That's from Carl. That is history in my country. That couldn't happen under a PMP administration. All me used to hear was more taxes, Mark Golden. Anyhow, I want to get to something before I forgot about it. I want to punch hole in a Mark Golden piece of rubbish Tuesday evening gone. And I'm going to take you.
Why you characterize it as such? He gave a speech, his contribution to the budget debate.
I think contribution Tuesday then.
Yeah, man. So what are the holes you're punching in that?
I'm going to punch it in a housing trust. If you should put up the rent to own, you would have to change the housing trust act to accommodate that part. Because the reason why housing trust would have to employ people afterwards to go and look at those houses that people have been occupied before they could be own them.
Yeah, under the rent part.
Under the rent part. Mr. Morgan, I want to take you further down now.
You have a minute, Carl. Go ahead.
Mr. Morgan, also.
Yes, sir.
Housing trust will have to get lawyers to, if those people should run in any difficult for a 4 or 5 months when they cannot pay the rent before they could be owning the place. That's if anything are you going to put them out. If people decide to they not come out then how that will have go, Mr. Morgan?
Mm-hmm.
This thing needs to charged out properly.
All right.
I don't believe in a person that come with a bag of mouth and just throw things out the door without looking at it and tell me how it's going to work.
They would have to demonstrate to you that this would be sound financially and fiscally.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for your perspective, Carl. I'm going to invite you to call back tomorrow. We're on tomorrow again, Friday, 21st March. We'll be here.
Yes, we have somebody put out a speech this evening, which we all will understand how government work.
All right, so call us as we interrogate that speech and aspects of it tomorrow. I want to thank you, Carl. I want to thank my other guests, Thalia, Nadine, Kev, Dennis Chung, and others. Broadcast technician Tanner Richards. Our intern today was Caleb Brown. To advertise with us, call our sales agents at 876-831-1846 or 876-349-4544, and you may also email our sales department at newstalk93fmsales@gmail.com. I am Marlon Morgan. This has been Straight Up for this here March 20 edition. Stay with us as we run to the NPR News, and we rejoin you tomorrow at 9:05 for more here on Straight Up. Tune in.
The time on News Talk 93 FM is 12 o'clock.
Contact News Talk 93 FM today via phone at 876-927-1660, extension 2475, or 876-427-9955. Email us at newstalk93fmsales@gmail.com. Visit our website at www.newstalk93fm.net.
You're listening to the Global News Podcast from the BBC World Service. Hello, I'm Oliver Conway. We're recording this at 14 hours GMT on Thursday, the 20th of March. The Israeli military tells Palestinians not to use the main road linking North and South Gaza, while Hamas fires rockets into Israel. EU leaders meet to discuss how to beef up European defence in the face of Russian threats. And a unique medical trial is being carried out in Bangladesh to identify victims of methanol poisoning. Also in the podcast, the French survival manual for armed conflict and natural disaster. And
there'll never be anyone like Eddie Jordan. Eddie was a huge influence on me and many, many people in motorsport and around the world. There'll never be anyone like him.
Tributes are paid to motor racing boss Eddie Jordan, who's died at the age of 76. Israel is once again tightening its grip on Gaza, deploying troops in an area known as the Netzarim Corridor, a buffer between north and south. The Israeli army has warned people to avoid the main road through the middle of the Palestinian territory. Hamas says the ground operation is a new and dangerous violation of the ceasefire, and it's launched rockets at Israel. Hundreds of people have been killed since Israel resumed its attacks on Gaza on Monday night. Saqib Rokadia is a doctor at Nasser Hospital in Han Yunis.
The emergency area, it was just chaos. So whilst we were there were bodies and patients, alive and dead, just on the back of donkey carts, pulling up to the hospital. And in amidst this, a few healthcare workers, there were a couple of nurses who were just calm, resilient, worked hard, even through the most atrocious times.
Just before we came into the studio, I got an update on events in Gaza from our Middle East correspondent, Emir Nada.
Yesterday we saw the first resumption of Israel's ground operations since the ceasefire came into effect at the beginning of January. The ground forces had mostly pulled back from Gaza but had remained on a kind of a buffer zone around the perimeter. And then this key corridor that the Israeli army had cut through Gaza during the war, called the Netzrim corridor, as you mentioned, they've begun to return to certain locations along this corridor. It cuts the north and the south of Gaza in two, and today we've had more information from the Israeli military that they are expanding other ground operations in the north of Gaza in an area called Beit Lahia, which in that northern part of Gaza has been one of the sites, one of the areas that has witnessed some of the most fierce fighting, and the local residents really have suffered the most throughout the year. We've also seen Hamas responding today, firing rockets into Tel Aviv, towards Tel Aviv, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, tell us more about that rocket attack, the first time, I imagine, since the ceasefire was agreed.
That's correct. On Tuesday, when Israel began its aerial bombardment again in the Gaza Strip, shattering the ceasefire, we saw 2 days really of Hamas saying, no, we intend to return to the negotiations, calling on mediators to intervene. We were waiting to see if that might change, and indeed today it looks like it has, and Hamas have returned to open fighting for the first time since the ceasefire came into effect in January, claiming these 3 rockets. None of them have claimed any injuries when they entered Israel today. One of them intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile defense system, 2 falling into sort of open land in Israel. But Hamas has said that they have launched these 3 rockets in retaliation for what they called Israel's massacres in the past few days. And the latest figures we're getting from the local health officials in Gaza is that since the fighting resumed at the beginning of Tuesday morning, over 590 Palestinians in Gaza have been counted dead, of which 200 are children.
And is there any hope of getting the ceasefire back on track? I understand some key members of the Israeli cabinet aren't keen on it.
Indeed, when the ceasefire came into effect in the middle of January, there were a number of politicians, indeed part of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition. They withdrew their support from the coalition. One minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was the Minister of National Security, stepped down and resigned, and his party withdrew from supporting Prime Minister Netanyahu's party. They wanted to continue fighting the war. Since the war has resumed and Israel has decided to resume hostilities, they have rejoined the government, providing a political boon for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has other domestic issues at play as well. He's trying to pass a budget. He's fighting a number of domestic political issues and indeed some legal issues. But it does seem like those politicians who've returned to the government are indeed seeing that Israel now intends to pursue the military strategy that they've been calling for throughout.
Emir Nada in Jerusalem. Following his phone call with President Trump yesterday, the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky said a lasting peace can be achieved this year. But so far, Vladimir Putin hasn't even agreed a temporary ceasefire, and the Americans appear reluctant to put pressure on him. The shift in US foreign policy under Donald Trump has led to soul-searching in Europe. And today, EU nations are discussing how to provide extra support for Ukraine and to beef up their own security. On his way into the meeting in Brussels, the Lithuanian president, Gitanas Nausėda, said Russia posed a real threat.
Like 87 years ago, before the Second World War, we are standing in front of strategic choice to let the aggressor escalate the violence and fear, or to stop it, to paralyze its ability to intimidate us, and to build a credible wall of defense separating Europe and Russian Federation.
Our Europe regional editor Danny Eberhard in Brussels told me more about the talks.
Europe's own defence is one of the main things, as well as bolstering support for Ukraine. There is also efforts to try to bolster Europe's defence. There was a white paper presented by the European foreign policy chief yesterday. It takes on basically the idea that Europe must spend massively on borrowing money heavily to invest in defence. This would help, for example, on issues like joint procurement of military weapons. They've identified a number of priorities, things like air defences, missiles, anti-drone technology, these sort of things, and it will also help to improve joint purchases of weapons for efficiency. So a number of different things that they'll be looking at. The sense there we got from Gitanas Nauseda that Europe really is facing a very different era now, and that urgency is very much first and foremost in their minds.
Yeah, I mean, would they even be discussing this stuff if it wasn't for President Trump's new approach?
Good question. It has been on the issue. What Donald Trump's second presidency has given everything is a very new and urgent focus. So Europe is feeling the chill winds of a Washington that is pulling back some of its European commitments. There are questions as to the reliability of the US as an ally. So what leaders are talking about is Europe needs to look after its own defense in a very, very short frame. Some people are saying 3 to 5 years. Other people flag up 2030. In the interim period, Europe still depends very much on the security umbrella that's provided by the US, so it has to tread a very sensitive diplomatic line. That's why you won't hear outright condemnation of Donald Trump's approach on the peace process. You'll hear European leaders welcome that while expressing their own fears and stressing that this is not just about Ukraine's own security, but Europe's security as well.
Yeah, briefly, how united are they?
On the issue of defence, there's a broad consensus that Europe needs to change and change fast, but there is a big division on the provision of military aid to Ukraine. The main dissenter there is Hungary. It has never provided military aid for Ukraine, and it stays away from declarations. It pulls out of them, so the declaration gets signed by 26 EU nations on these sort of things rather than 27.
Danny Eberhard in Brussels. The former motor racing boss, Eddie Jordan, has died in South Africa at the age of 76. The flamboyant Irish businessman was also a successful television pundit. Retired Formula One star Damon Hill says he was a huge influence.
He was gregarious, as you know. He was irreverent. He was crazy. I lived in Ireland when I raced with Eddie, and I was privileged to have won the Grand Prix with Eddie. And he influenced everyone. And there isn't a single person in that era and since really has not been affected positively in some way by Eddie. He gave a huge amount to charity. He never stopped. He never wasted a single second of his life. And he energised everyone he was near.
Damon Hill. The BBC's former Formula One correspondent Jonathan Ledyard told me why Eddie Jordan was so special.
He was a one-off. He was a unique character, as Damon Hill was saying there. People say that some characters in life you meet, their glass is half full. Eddie's was always overflowing. He brought such a unique charisma, a unique personality, humanity, resilience, but also he knew how to do a deal, from selling cars in Dublin. And here was a man who started as a banker, then wanted to go racing, selling cars and so on. He went from being a wannabe Formula One star in a Silverstone lock-up garage to winning the Belgian Grand Prix at the iconic Spa circuit with Damon Hill, the 1996 world champion, leading home Ralf Schumacher, his Jordan teammate, and an extraordinary 1-2. He always believed the impossible was possible, and usually he did that.
Yeah, tell us more about his team and how he challenged the more established teams.
He took on the big guys. He beat Ferrari, he beat McLaren, he beat Williams, he took all comers, and actually, were it not for their star driver in 1999, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, pressing the wrong buttons which killed his engine, he could well have gone on to have the world champion driver in that year, and that would have taken his team, which was a very small beer team from Formula 3, coming up through the junior formulas, getting into Formula 1, designing what was, in his first season in 1991, regarded as one of the most beautiful cars ever. If he'd won the world championship with Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 1999, that could have taken him to another level. As it was, Frentzen pressed the wrong buttons. They didn't finish just 2 points behind the other two, Hacken and Eddie Irvine, former Eddie Jordan driver, by the way, in that championship, and Jordan sort of tailed off. But he just brought this zing to everything he did. I remember going to various sponsorship dinners and in Monaco Yacht Club, and believe you me, there aren't many more swish venues than that. And he absolutely launched into these sponsorship executives who were sponsoring his team. Only Eddie Jordan could get away with some of the expediencies he came out with and still get their money.
And what was he like behind the scenes? Because you were the F1 correspondent when he was at his peak.
Well, I'll tell you a personal story. My last race for Five Live was in 2004. We flew home on a private jet with one of his former designers to Oxford, and my taxi was late. And now many people would have said, right, Jonathan, you just sit here, I'm going to do stuff. He stayed with me and talked for 2 hours about life, about Formula One, about family, about everything. And he was the most human of Formula One team owners in an environment rightly known as the Piranha Club. A one-off, a unique character.
Jonathan Ledyard on Eddie Jordan, who has died at the age of 76. Canada has condemned the execution of 4 Canadians in China amid continuing diplomatic tensions. The Chinese embassy in Canada defended the executions, telling CBC News that, quote, whoever violates the law of China must be held accountable. More details from Stephanie Prentice.
The identities of the Canadians haven't been released and the reasons behind the killings haven't been confirmed. But officials in Canada say the executions went ahead despite their pleas for leniency. Canada's Foreign Minister Melanie Joly told reporters in Ottawa that alongside former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, she tried for months to make a deal with Chinese authorities. Now she's turning her focus to other Canadians in detention and facing the same fate.
We will continue to engage with China as we'll continue to not only strongly condemn, but also ask for leniency for other Canadians that are facing similar situations.
China has released a statement claiming the executions were due to drug charges. It's believed to execute more prisoners each year than the rest of the world combined, traditionally through gunshot or lethal injection. The relationship between China and Canada has been tense in recent years. They're currently locked in a retaliatory battle on tariffs, and relations have been icy since Canada arrested a prominent Huawei executive in 2018 at Vancouver Airport on a US warrant. Beijing then detained 2 Canadians on espionage charges and moved many countries at the time called hostage politics. They've been trading barbs ever since, and it had been hoped the recent Canadian leadership changes would be an opportunity to reset relations.
Stephanie Prentice. London's black cab drivers are well known for their detailed grasp of the roads in the British capital. In fact, studies have shown their brains actually change due to the amount of information they're storing. But it takes years to memorise all the routes needed to pass the infamous test known as the knowledge. Here's one driver called Billy.
Listen, if you're thinking about doing the knowledge, you've got to eat, sleep. Honestly, there's been people out there who've lost their marriages and everything through doing the knowledge. I know people that have done that.
Well, there are now calls to make the knowledge easier, as a think tank warns that black cabs could vanish from the capital's streets within 2 decades, in part because of the severe demands on the drivers. Hugo Spears is a professor of cognitive science at University College London.
For me, I mean, as a scientist, I'd like it to see it continuing to be rigorous because we're benefiting from their brains, quite literally. So making it a lot easier from a scientific perspective would be a shame. On the other hand, I'm really keen to support the profession. They're absolutely amazing what the London licensed taxi drivers can do, and I think they're up there with like the greatest sort of things in London. They're a real cultural phenomenon. I would not want to see that profession pass away. About 20 years ago, a key study discovered that there's a particular part of the brain that seems to get larger in London taxi drivers. There's a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which stores your sort of life's memories and allows you to help you navigate. The London taxi driver is unique in having to remember that vast amount of information, and it seems to change part of their brain in a way that no other professions do that have been studied. There was some nice work done at the end of last year, published, showing that 2 professions particularly are having low incidence of deaths from Alzheimer's, were taxi drivers and ambulance drivers. And considering this is sort of people dying later in life, it's probably people who spent years not using GPS to navigate, a bit like our London taxi drivers. There's a big drive for brain health now across nations, and keeping your brain active and exactly what London taxi drivers do, having gained the knowledge,